All right. So, man, okay. I've decided not to record because I just went into like a deep dive exploration. Um, I'm at the point where I don't even know if this will work. I've broken so many things. Okay, it still works. All right. So I'm at the point, we're still building up this form. We've yet to be able to implement the ability to create an entry on a particular um, ledger. Yeah. Um, we got into, uh, I've commented out the block. Oops. Let's see. This block. We were just starting this handle create entry. And I was saying, something that keeps coming back up is the fact that I am using a custom API to fetch data from the server. And then I send it over the wire, HTTP, back to the client. I lose the types. And that's what we left off at. I'm trying to, I can piecemeal, I need a connection. There's this get token account balance. I need to pass in type public keys. So what I need to do is like a new Anchor, public key, or new Solana Web3 public key, and then pass in the stuff. And I'm slowly kind of like rebuilding it. And that's where we left off. I'm going to comment this back out for now. It kind of kept on coming back as to like what is up with the types? How do you retype this properly? And this kind of opened up for me, helped me connect some dots. Not fully getting it, but thanks to friendly people on Anchor and the SvelteKit, Svelte Discord, I've been able to kind of piece together some gaps in my knowledge. One thing that I did mention and what I was told is like, okay, if you're going to perform a fetch, if you're going to build your own custom API and do something like this where you define the different HTTP methods and you go out and you do some data fetching, which here I'm using a rebuild the Anchor program, and I go and fetch the ledgers and I send it back as a response. But I have to stringify this. So if you're going to do that, one of the things that comes up is, or that was mentioned and I've read, it's like you don't necessarily know what you're going to get when you go out and you're fetching from anywhere, some other API. You're maybe not 100% sure what sort of response you're going to get. At this point here in my custom get, like when I perform this program account ledger, I know because I'm building this whole program object off of the Anchor, off of my generated IDL. So I know this is fetching on-chain my program accounts. And I know the structure and all that for them. That's fine. But as soon as I send it as a response and I have it stringified, if I go back and I try to, here in my custom load or something, I try to go and I hit my custom API route, try to perform the get request, the get method, and the data that I come back, it's not fully typed. And you've seen me do this with trying to use promise, Anchor, like it kind of shows up, but it's not really fully typed. So this is because TypeScript is not, it's helpful for us kind of as developers for IntelliSense and stuff like this while we're working. but ultimately my understanding is that TypeScript does not have any like runtime object validation. Where you're checking the types at runtime. My understanding is that this is not what TypeScript can do. So you have to kind of rebuild your types, revalidate and verify that whenever you perform any sort of fetch outside of your program and you get some sort of response, you're not entirely guaranteed to get what you expect. And so therefore, on the client side, you need to rebuild the types and validate it. How do you do that? Well, this gets into the realm of something that I've heard about, tRPC and Zod. I've worked with Zod a little bit. I have a little understanding of this, but tRPC is something that is, I think, I need to look into it, but I think this is kind of one of the areas that this is exactly why you would use something like tRPC. Because again, if I go and do sort of fetch data from the server, like I'm doing with my custom API, it's on the server, I'm running that fetch, that program, fetch on the server, then you lose the typing as you send it back as a response to the front end. That's where tRPC and Zod, I believe, can kind of come into play, where you can actually use tRPC to basically define and write your kind of custom types, I guess, on the server itself. And then it uses some fancy TypeScript inferring capabilities to essentially keep your backend, meaning like the server, types in sync with your client side types. So I think I'm starting to kind of draw that conclusion from what I've been reading. Another thing, Wes Boss, awesome guy, did a short 2-minute little snippet on YouTube about TypeScript's new satisfies. And if you look at the SvelteKit documents, some of the examples were like loading data. If you get in here, you'll notice that they are actually using this after, with this update, they actually use this whole satisfies and then the type rather than directly typing it. So the TLDR of this is that if you just do like export const load type layout load, that is not, it's okay. It's good for like IntelliSense, but it doesn't, it also allows you to mess with properties that don't exist on this. And so better is to use the satisfies keyword and then your type for, I think it seems a bit more stricter with your typing and better IntelliSense because it knows exactly, I don't know, it just seems to be the new, better approach. And the satisfies layout load, actually, it doesn't seem to actually type it or assign that type to whatever, but still pretty useful in that sense. So that's a nice like little tidbit. But one thing that I have experienced and I was just curious about is this is because I'm fetching the data from the server, from like all these, let me go, all of these, and I've got way too many of them, but this is just exploration. When I get into my Ledger program, I have layout.server.ts. I've got, that's just me doing directly. I also have my API. This is where these two, my custom API endpoint is performing. It's defining, exporting the get method, functions. But inside, I'm rebuilding the anchor program, and I'm doing the search or the fetch from there. But I lose the typing when it comes back to my client side. When I do the data loading from any of the SvelteKit load functions. And those load functions are all over the place. You can have one in layout TS, page server TS, like there's server load, there's a layout load, there's a layout server load, there's a page load, there's a page server load, there's a bunch of load functions, and they behave a little bit differently. But all this is to say, if I go, all these load functions again make your populate and help out your this data prop that is available inside your Svelte component, your page components. Okay, so super helpful. But if you're performing a fetch from the server, even when you use a load and you go out and hit your stuff, it's still, you're losing the types, okay? It's not really fully validated that it is the same. Also, however, if you do the load, say you ignore the server. Say I use layout.ts and I perform a load. This is hitting the server. This is hitting the server. This is hitting the server. But here, if I scroll down, this part, this second function, what are the typing differences if I don't use server? Meaning use the anchor program directly to directly fetch here. I should say from client. Answer to this, types are types or data is fully typed. So this particular function, this got into like, okay, well, what if I bypass and I don't use my custom API, even though we've done some work around it and troubleshoot. What if I just skip all that and I just use the load and I rebuild my connection and program and all that, and I just fetch from here and return that data? Well, I've got it LayoutLoad ledgers from, client with anchor. This actually brings back the correct types. So to show you that, if I come in here and I go back to ledger, remember I've got a bunch of logs here, but remember that if I go to just page.svelte, like this is my main root page and the data object, if I go open this up, and I'm returning all kinds of variations of this, but LayoutLoad ledgers from API, which is from the server, versus LayoutLoad. So if you look at this, LayoutLoad ledgers from API, this is where it's partially there. We've seen this, it has the right shape, but this is not type public keys. The numbers are type strings instead of type bin, those sorts of things. But if I open up the LayoutLoad ledgers from client, so it's not going through the server, it's just staying on the all client side, and I use the anchor, rebuild to do that fetch, then sure enough, we get the full type. Authority is type public key, right in here. The entry count is type bin3. I don't know, but it's a type bin. Token account is of type public key. It also has, so like this is fully typed and aligned with our Anchor IDL generated types. Super darn helpful because it's just all right there. Same with like PageLoad. I'm trying this out from different areas, and yeah, like if I didn't if I didn't fetch the data through the server and I just do it through client, then that's cool. Like it seems to do quite, like, I mean, it seems to keep all that and you don't have to really worry about the typing. However, if you do want to use the API route, like which is kind of executing on the server, then you need to, you're going to have to figure out a way to rebuild the types. And that could be a sense of like a combination of, it could be full out tRPC, which I don't know enough about. I've never tried it. Could be something fun. It could be a little bit of Zod and its schemas, or you can even custom roll your own type of type guard combined with the type of operator to infer TypeScript types from runtime definition. This guy, this article just really goes through and details like how you could do it and some of the shortcomings, because ultimately they kind of give an overview of like how to correctly use TypeScript types for your API response. This was really helpful for me to kind of really connect the dots, like, okay, so this is a problem. Sorry, this is a problem, getting your data and not having the right typing, not fully knowing. And this article really details some great examples, and I think I'm going to link this in the video to walk through. Basically, you can kind of build your own typing validation, and kind of on the client side, you can use these use this kind of approach where you're using a little bit of defining a type guard and using infer to the type of operator to infer the TypeScript type from the runtime definition. And I think this started to make some sense to me, like, this is where things like tRPC, that's why people seem to be really like wow about it, you know, because I think it handles and addresses this exact kind of scenario. So it would be kind of neat, like if you could use tRPC and somehow, you know, on the server, you are building, where would be like, you know, like somehow in the server files or whatever, like it has the schema essentially for my my ledger struct account or my entry account, and it all meshes and gels well with Anchor's IDL that's generated from our Rust code. So yeah, kind of cool, to be honest. And I don't know what's the best approach or anything like that. Obviously, fetching just from the client, doing my data loads. Where am I? If I were to just load, this is my test. Come on. Yeah, if I were to just load from the client directly and not mess with the server, then we're good. This works. Yeah, and then one last thing, I did check at, for some reason, with the layout.ts, so the LayoutLoad and the PageLoad, I don't seem to have access to my stores. So at first I was like, well, let me just try to use my wallet store and my workspace store. You know, really I don't need my wallet store for this because it's just a Anchor program fetch. So I was like, okay, let me try to use my workspace store using Svelte's like get method to get my workspace store, and then I have access to, you know, do workspace store dot program dot, whatever, go account fetch, whatever. And that just doesn't work. It doesn't seem to work from the layout. I thought first, I was like, well, I don't really set up the whole workspace store until my layout.svelte component, here, based off of how the instructions from the Svelte on Solana package, how they tell you how to set it up. So I don't have access to it, but yeah, I either way, I thought maybe layout.ts won't work, but maybe a PageLoad would work from and that still did not work. So seems to be something up with like maybe accessing stores inside load functions may not be the best approach. That said, though, okay, skip the store, don't need it. Now that I know how to, manually rebuild the correct program, Anchor program, it's enough for what I need to do. So, yeah, so that's that. Just a quick little spiel on what I learned. I think it's really cool. It does bring up possibilities with tRPC, perhaps. I need to look into that more, or Zod, or both. And one thing I did ask on Anchor, just curious, and I need to look into it more, is like maybe there's something that our program object can also help with, if we were to continue to perform the fetch from the server with HTTP, we lose the types, but maybe somehow on the front, on the client, we could, have access to, the workspace store, which has the program and has our matching IDL, to maybe there's a utility there or a way to kind of rebuild your types, which in essence kind of, does what something like tRPC could do. And I think there may be something like that, just because, you do have Anchor does a lot of the work for you, and it all does that whole automatic type generation with its IDL that makes a lot of this stuff, connect end to end. So maybe there's something there. I need to look into it more, but I wanted to share. So that's that for now. Just a little aha moment for me. I'm going to continue next, going to continue building up the ability to submit some actual, create some actual entries, continuing with this approach. So yeah, hope that helped.